Hello, welcome back to YouTube, guys. It's on your New Year's Day, so first video of 2018. Hope you had a lovely night last night. Of course, Happy New Year to everybody, and again, thanks for tuning in on your New Year's Day. So, the first video of 2018 is going to have a look at various things. Have a look at solar activity. We're going to have a look at what's happening in the stratosphere over the North Pole in terms of stratospheric temperatures. We'll have a look at when it's week 10 days as well, with some colder weather coming up over the weekend. Maybe a little bit of snow for a few places over the weekend. Not sure how long that's going to last at the moment. We begin, though, by having a look at the CT. We have got the central temperature confirmed for December now at Hadley. So we're coming out at with a CT of 4.8 for December 2017, which is very, very close to the long-term 30-year average. Not a great deviation in terms of the CT for December 2017. We've also got the yearly temperature as well for 2017. And that's coming out, or it came out, at 10.58, which is our warmest yearly CT since, I think, 2014, although it's not all that far from 2015, or, in fact, from last year, or the year before, as it is now, 2016, either. So, just have a quick look at the last time we had this CT in December coming out at around this temperature. So, last year we came out with a very mild December CT to 6.0. Year before that, of course, 2015, we came out at 9.7, exceptionally mild, in fact, a warm December, easily the warmest December on record in 2015. The year before that, 2014, coming out at 5.2, so warmer than this year as well. Before that, 2013 comes out at 6.3, another very mild December. We have had a run of really mild Decembers recently. And then we've got 2012, which comes out at 4.8 to the CT of 4.8. So exactly the same CT in December 2017 as December 2012. I think there has been more snow this December than we had in 2012. The year before that, 2011, very mild December there, 6.0. And then, of course, we come to 2010, where we have the December to remember with just about one of the coldest Decembers on record. Not quite the coldest, but at minus 0.7, it was a negative CT month, our first negative CT month at that point since February 1986. Incredibly cold December, and as I say, it's only around 0.1 or 0.2 of a degree away from being the coldest December in the entire CT index. That goes back to 1659, so it's very, very close to being the coldest December for like 350 years. If we hadn't had that milder end, perhaps if the cold had ran on just another couple of days after Christmas in December 2010, would have been the coldest December in the CT sort of index going back to 1659. So since then, it's been generally quite mild in December. As I say, this one is a slightly cooler one, similar to 2012. Haven't yet had a cold December, though. Still waiting for one of those. So that's December sorted out. Let's have a look at what's happening in terms of solar activity. So this is the solar disk on our side of this today from solarham.net, and there's no sunspots. We are spotless at the moment. It's been quite a trend over the past few weeks and months that we have gone into a very low level of solar activity. This is because of its New Year solar activity tracker updated by our good friend James Aquila. This is updated to yesterday, New Year's Eve. It covers the whole of 2017, the whole of the year. So you can see what's happened through the year with solar activity. We started, interestingly, at quite a minimum level of solar activity, because we are going into solar minimum. We'll be arriving at solar minimum in around a year to 18 months' time. But we started off in 2017 quite a minimum level, and they've been gradually sort of lifting up and dropping downwards in a non-linear fashion through the year. So, for example, in February, we get a bit of a spike in activity, but then in March, we go to quite a low level of activity. Another lift up in activity, so activity in April, I mean quite a low level of activity through May and June. And then we get to September, we have this big spike in solar activity then. So you'll see all the trend lines, which are the thick red, thick green line there, lifting up, and this orange line, which is actually the daily sunspot number, that is shooting up as well. So we go to really quite a high level of solar activity in September, and then since then we've seen a collapse of solar activity, all of the trend lines really dropping to a very minimum level. That's where we are right now up to New Year through December, and essentially we are at a very minimal level of solar activity now. Wouldn't necessarily say we're into the true solar minimum. It's a little bit early for that. Maybe around 6 to 12 months time we'll be in the true sort of solar minimum, but we are certainly at a very minimum level of solar activity. Now, the reason we look at this is because there is a connection between sunspot numbers and particularly low levels of sunspots and an increased chance of winter blocking, particularly on the Eurasian side of the Arctic. So when you have a low level of sunspots and solar activity, you increase a chance of getting more blocking over the pole, and blocking is the route to pushing the cold air out of the pole and down into the mid-latitude. So you tend to get colder winters around minimum levels of solar activity, and particularly just after solar minimum, as you're beginning the new solar cycle. That appears to be the greatest chance of getting winter blocking and colder winters as well. So we're at a very minimum level of solar activity, and this may be playing a part in why we're having a slightly cooler winter this year, or up to now anyway, slightly cooler. Wouldn't say we've had a cold winter, of course, not yet. Can't say that, but certainly we are having a slightly cooler winter compared to what we've had for a few years, I think. And as I say, there has been more snow in this December than we've had in any December since 2010, albeit nowhere near the kind of disruptive snowfalls that we had in 2010. You'll be seeing a lot more of the GAS Weather Solar Tracker as we go through 2018. This is what's happening in the stratosphere in terms of the temperature at 30 HPA over the North Pole. Now, this is a bit alarming if you want cold weather, because what's happened is that we've had an absolute collapse or a crash in the temperature in the stratosphere at 30 HPA over North Pole. So the grey line here is the trend line for this time of the year. The black line shows where the temperatures have been at 30 HPA, which is one of the top levels of the atmosphere in the stratosphere over North Pole. The black line is where we've been through this season. So we begin in September and we're on trend. The grey line and the black line are kind of rooted together. We go into November and December. It actually goes quite cold in the stratosphere at that point at 10 HPA, 30 HPA I should say. But after that, through December, this is December just here, we find that through most of it, the temperature in the stratosphere over North Pole has actually been a little bit above average, a little bit above the grey line. But look what's happened over the past few days. We've gone from there, which was just before Christmas, down to here. Very, very cold temperatures in the stratosphere at 10 HPA now, much colder than average. Of course, we are more or less at the lowest point of the year in terms of the temperature at 30 HPA. You can see that from the grey line just there. We're pretty much at the coldest point of the year, but we are significantly under that just there. So we have had a really cold plunge in terms of the stratospheric temperature at 30 HPA. And 10 HPA shows a similar story. This is a bit higher up, right at the very top level of the stratosphere, or more or less towards the top level of the stratosphere. And we can see that, again, it's not quite as dramatic, but even so, the black line has dropped quite a bit over the past few days from being a little bit warmer than average to being quite a bit colder than average now. So both 10 and 30 HPA, we have seen quite a drop, quite a plunge in the temperature in the stratosphere, particularly so, however, at 30 HPA. Now, when you've got a cold stratosphere, it tends to increase the polar vortex. So, when the polar vortex increases, it tends to keep cold air bottled up around Greenland and Canada, and that tends to strengthen the jet stream, strengthens the westerlies. The zonal westerlies are what bring us mild winter conditions. So, a cold stratosphere over North Pole tends to be something that goes along with milder, more zonal westerly winters in the UK and Europe. We're looking to get a stratospheric warming, or maybe a sudden stratospheric warming. If we did that, we would take that black line all the way up to here somewhere within a few days. It always looked really, really dramatic. And when that happens, then a few weeks afterwards, you can start to set up blocking over the pole. As long as the warm temperatures in the stratosphere propagate down into the troposphere, which is the boundary where weather is taking place. Sometimes they don't, but as long as those warm temperatures propagate down into the troposphere, you can start to set up blocking 2 or 3 weeks after a sudden stratospheric warming. Now, obviously, we've got no sign of a sudden stratospheric warming right now. In fact, we have gone the other way, gone into a colder stratosphere, but we'll keep looking. We are expecting to get a sudden stratospheric warming this winter because of the state of the drivers, such as the easterly QBO having a minimum level of solar activity. Also, the way we increase snow cover very rapidly for October across Russia. All of those things kind of point us towards the chance of an increased chance of getting a sudden stratospheric one, but there's never a guarantee that you'll get one. Sometimes they just don't materialise. If they do materialise, it's not till very late, so sort of March, April, and by that time they don't impact the winter, of course. So we're going to wait and see. We should get a stratospheric warming or a sudden stratospheric warming this winter, but at the moment we've gone the other way. We've actually gone into a very cold stratosphere. So this is what GFS is predicting in terms of the temperature in the stratosphere, 10 HPA for the next couple of weeks. We're starting off today on New Year's Day. These blue and purple colours are the cold temperatures that we've got over the North Pole in the stratosphere right now. We're looking to infiltrate brighter colours into the pole, essentially. So we want to get rid of these blue and purple colours, and we want to move in sort of greens and yellows, and preferably even get red colours starting to appear. And if we see red colours starting to appear and push into the pole, then we're having a sudden stratospheric warming. So that's where we are right now. Those blue and purple colours anchored, rooted over the pole in the stratosphere. Let's run through, see what's going to happen. Well, we do generate some yellow colours around the edges there, but they're not really penetrating into the pole all that well. The temperature is lifting up a little bit over North Pole compared to what we've got right now, so a bit of a warming is taking place, but certainly not a sudden stratospheric warming, probably not anything that would particularly change the weather pattern. This is going up to the 9th of January, so moving into the extended range of the GFS model now. Let's carry on running through. And again, there's no sign of any particular warming taking place. We have got a minor warming happening just there over Siberia, trying to get up in towards the pole, but that's pretty insignificant, and it doesn't get into the North Pole anyway. So essentially, for the next couple of weeks, the GFS wants to keep these cold temperatures going in the stratosphere over the North Pole at 10 HPA, albeit perhaps not quite as cold as where we are right now, but certainly no sign of a stratospheric warming, and definitely no sign of a sudden stratospheric warming over the North Pole within the next couple of weeks. We shall carry on looking. So these are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. Now, the interesting thing about this winter is that we haven't had a sudden stratospheric warming. We haven't really had a stratospheric warming. We've generally had quite a coldish stratosphere over North Pole, but it hasn't stopped us from having a fair amount of blocking, actually, and it hasn't stopped us from getting this cooler December. So, I mean, we have had at least 2 or 3 snow events during December, which is quite unusual when you've got a fairly cold stratospheric temperature. And we've got more cold conditions coming up over weekend and into start of next week as well. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average. Going to be a bit up and down with the temperatures over the next few days, so we've got a bit of a zonal sine wave with warmer and colder sectors alternating. But over the weekend into start of next week, going quite cold then. We do see a bit of a split, though, within that period. So some of these ensemble members up here are not all that far from average, really. Whereas these ensemble members down here, they are producing really quite cold conditions. So exactly how cold it's going to get at the weekend into the start of next week, that's a little bit uncertain. And then as we go beyond that, however, we find the temperatures do start to return back towards average as well. So we probably start to see the Atlantic making inroads as we go into the second week of January. Dates on the bottom of the chart, of course. Lots of precipitation coming up as well. It looks like we're in for a really unsettled January. Loads of rainfall spikes there and loads there. We do get a slightly drier period just there over weekend and start of next week as it goes a little bit colder. But essentially this is looking like a very unsettled first half to January with quite a lot of rain indeed. Temperature anomalies for next week is going from today, New Year's Day, through to the 9th of January, looking like this. So again, it's the same old story. We've been looking at this a lot, and most of Europe are coming out very substantially warmer than average. The greatest anomaly to average is across the eastern part of Europe. Over in the west, we've got the coolest anomalies to average. Actually, Scotland and Ireland are coming out a bit colder than average, as is parts of Norway as well. For England and Wales, it's a little bit milder than average with the temperature anomaly, but not a big deviation. And I say generally, the UK, Ireland, Norway and Portugal, also parts of Spain, are the coolest places to average in Europe. Also Iceland as well over here. Anywhere from France eastwards is generally significantly warmer than average, particularly so for eastern and southeastern parts of Europe, which is a big flip around on what happened last winter, because the cold, and it was brutal cold as well, was in the east and the southeast of Europe through most of last winter. So it's quite a flip, the pattern this year on last winter. Precipitation anomalies for next week from the 1st to 9th of January look like that. Generally average to wetter than average through many western and northern parts of Europe. It's going to be an unsettled start to January. So this is the GFS for Thursday, and it looks unsettled. We've got low pressure around the country, and that low pressure is going to be moving in on Friday as well. So it could be bouts of rain through this week. Will be really quite unsettled too. Notice this low pressure is going onto a southerly track, and we're raising heights, raising the pressure around Iceland, and also extending through the northern Atlantic as well. That's sending the jet stream down there. So the jet stream is on a southerly track. We are on the cold side of the jet by the time we get through to the end of this week. And so the upshot of that is that by Saturday, we're taking this low pressure out to the east, and we're pulling in these colder east to northeasterly winds. Now, there is a weather front that's marking the boundary between sort of the milder conditions that we've got on the eastern side of this low pressure and the colder conditions are on the northern side of this low pressure. That weather front might produce some snow on Friday and into Saturday. It'll be very much determined by the exact parameters in terms of the temperatures that we've got at that point, just how much of an undercut of the weather front that we get from the cold air from the north. But it isn't impossible that some places might get some snow on Friday and into Saturday, and the most likely areas of that probably Scotland and Northern Ireland on Friday, and then Northern England and Wales by Saturday, maybe the Midlands as well. But I have to emphasise this is very early days on that, and we'll know more in a couple of days' time. There's the upper air temperatures for Saturday, showing that it's reasonably mild in the south, but it is much colder for Northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. As I say, there is weather front that's marking the boundary, but might do something wintry. Then we go through to Sunday, and that low pressure slipping away to the south. Winds are going into the east. They could be bringing wintry showers into eastern parts of the country. There's the upper air temperatures. Does look quite cold in the north. Not as cold for England and Wales, but I suspect it might be a little bit colder in the end than that it is showing. Start of next week, we maintain those easterly winds, so quite a cold start to next week. Then we have a go at moving low pressure in from off the Atlantic. Something wintry could happen here. It just depends how cold the air is before these weather fronts and the low pressure starts to move back in from off the Atlantic, and how quickly the weather fronts and the low pressure move in. This is moving in very, very quickly. So this is Wednesday, and by then the high pressure has gone over towards the Black Sea, that sort of area over here. And very quickly we're seeing the Atlantic moving through. Whether that high pressure and the cold air is broken down as quickly as that, I think there has to be some uncertainty. Even with this, it is struggling, this front, to get through. So that's where the front is lying on Tuesday. It's out there. By Wednesday, the front is in this sort of position. So it is struggling to get across the country from Tuesday to Wednesday, and that's what's happening by Thursday. This is day 10, Thursday the 11th of January, when the low pressure is just here, but the front is kind of in that position. So definite stall is taking place of this front as it's pushing across the country. In not particularly cold air, so that's the only problem with this particular run of the GFS, that it would mostly be just a lot of cold rain from that struggling weather front. But of course the air that it's coming into might finish up colder than the GFS thinks that it will. This is how the ECMWF is looking for Thursday, so it looks unsettled with showers or longer spells of rain. There's that low pressure coming across the country on Friday. Again, to the north of that, we've got cold air digging in from the northeast. To the south, it's relatively mild, and there is a weather front that's in that sort of region, marking the boundary between the milder and colder air. How much of an undercut we get of that weather front will determine whether we get any snow from it. By Saturday, that low pressure is moving away to our south. The winds are turning into the north and the northeast, so that's bringing cold air down across the country. And by Sunday, we're in a really quite a bitter northeasterly wind there. That could be bringing in wintry showers, maybe snow showers, to parts of England and Wales. There's the upper air temperatures for Sunday. They are colder on the ECMWF compared to what the GFS is showing. That's a really cold northeasterly wind that we've got going on there next weekend. Doesn't last all that long though, so by a week today, Monday the 8th of January, the high pressure is starting to collapse down over top of the country. It's still cold, and it will be really frosty as well at night, and then low pressure starts to move it back in from off the Atlantic. So this is Tuesday the 9th of January to Wednesday the 10th, and again that high pressure is very quickly being shoved over towards the east of Europe. So these low pressures come in from off the Atlantic, probably just bringing rain. It would depend how cold the air is as those low pressures, the weather fronts move in from off the Atlantic. That's how we finish up on day 10, which is Thursday the 11th of January. And you'll notice that again, it looks like the low pressure is starting to slink down to the south. So it's starting to move in that direction, opening the door again to cold northerly winds. So despite the fact that we've got those cold stratospheric temperatures, and this is a really odd thing about this winter, in theory it should be a very zonal, really quite mild westerly winter, but it's actually turning out, for us in the UK anyway, and Ireland as well, it is turning out to be rather colder this winter than you would think when we've got such a cold stratosphere. So quite an interesting winter, and probably one that we'll be looking back on, I would have thought, in a few years' time. Finally, the GEMs, that's how things look for Thursday. Very unsettled. There's the low pressure coming through the country on Friday again, and that's where the weather front is going to be on Friday into Saturday and Sunday. That low pressure is away to the east. That turns the winds into the north and the northeast. That's bringing cold air down across the country. And this one always a little bit different. This one is actually maintaining cold weather up to day 10. So the high pressure slips down over the country by Monday the 8th, a week away. But the Atlantic doesn't break through. That high pressure goes up to Scandinavia, keeps us in cold winds, and the low pressures that are trying to break through, that do break through with the GFS and E70F. On this model, with this model, they're slipping down to our south, so we keep the cold air coming in from the east, and as we get to day 10, that's how we look, still in cold easterly sort of winds. So the GEM doesn't have any breakdown back to milder conditions, and that keeps us quite cold, really, from the end of this coming week right the way through to day 10, Thursday, the 11th of January. GM is always a little bit different, but I wouldn't totally rule out the chance that something like that could happen. Within the GFS ensembles, we do see quite a few ensemble members that show this as a possibility. So certainly there is a chance we might not revert back to milder conditions through the course of next week, and we might actually keep it cold up to day 10. So that's your New Year's Day update. So the main thing to take from this winter is that despite the fact that we've got the cold stratospheric temperatures, and you would think we've got a very strong polar vortex going on, it's not turning out as straightforwardly mild and zonal as you would expect. So we're really not doing too bad. It could be a lot worse. If you want cold weather, it could be a lot more zonal, and it could be a lot milder than what we've had so far. It looks like this sort of on-off, cold, mild is going to keep going through the first half of January. With always the prospect that if you get high pressure up to Scandinavia, like the GEM is showing just there, we might set up actually a week or so of really quite cold weather. And yes, there is a risk of some snow coming up at the end of week and into weekend, and we'll know more about that in a day or so's time. But expect to be seeing more snow watches as we go through the early part of 2018. Right, thanks for tuning in on your New Year's Day. Enjoy the rest of your New Year's Day, and Happy New Year. Bye for now.